Answer is no.
I literally lived with here once.
Yeah, Baruch, you're going to put the other Gemaras. We're going to be all over the place today.
I drove from here.
Rabbi, we're live.
We're live. Okay.
Somewhere around South Carolina. The tire pressure started saying low tire pressure. All your tires are flat.
All right, Lee, before I start, do you have any new updates on Chabad? 770 tunnels?
Well, I didn't hear this.
Well, you listened to the first few minutes.
I didn't know you were talking about either. I'm waiting here.
So page 1, page 2.
Well, no, the extension will be used there until next check comes, I guess.
Right here, you don't like using two-sided topping?
The other side is for your notes.
Sarah Shabbos.
Yeah, I walked by the refrigerator and the guy has a
Especially, it wasn't
it has
right at your showing.
ice cubes,
Travel there.
crushed ice, water, but it doesn't have a thing for crushed water.
You couldn't make it.
Oh, gosh.
I
I see.
Send it back.
Actually,
Mikey, call serviceman is on that.
I called him up.
would have been nice.
He's gonna look, later, you're rolling on the floor.
Okay, they say we're live. Put this on.
All right.
Good morning. This morning's share is sponsored by the Berger family. Le'iling Nishmas, Rabbi Berger's cousin, Yosef Aryeh Leib ben Eliezer Yaakov, Shalom Shalom. Unfortunately, his levaya is taking place this morning. In particular, I met your cousin. He became a mechudin to the Kaganoff family. Rabbi Kaganoff works for the yeshiva. His oldest daughter married Rabbi Berger's cousin. A wonderful man. He told me he was the president for many years of the Bialystok Shul in the Lower East Side. Anyone who's met Yidden from the Lower East Side,
No, I didn't have a television myself, I know very well.
yes,
He was sick for other 4 weeks.
was sick very short, and you know,
Some of the chassan a few weeks
No,
ago.
it was
Yeah.
gone for a week, but my mother-in-law got a text 4 weeks ago that they suspect something, they're not saying anything because they're not sure what it was, whatever it was.
Yeah, they like 1 week, went to the doctor, it was like 1 week.
Lamaisa, people from the Lower East Side are a very, very special breed of Yidden. Just last night, the schus of being around the elders of the Lower East Side were Bruving Feinstein, Shlita. And they literally live in a different world. I was standing with some of my Talmidim, and discussed to meet him, hear him speak, the Tomer Sorah event by the Trump Doral. And here you have one of the Ziknei Rosh Hashiva, the oldest Rosh Hashivas in America. He's talking about God. You know, God. So I turned to one of my Talmidim and said, notice his language. He doesn't say the Eibishter, Hashem Yisbarach, right?
Rabbanu Shalom.
Bono Shalom, all American God. But I said, I bet his emunah is much deeper than most of the people who could say the most highfalutin names for Hashem. I think Reuven Feinstein is a depiction, obviously, he's a Rosh Hashiva and Owen Gadol, son of Ramosha, but it trickles down to all the people in the Lower East Side, such beautiful Pasha Yidden with real solid emunah, and it's a wonderful, wonderful neighborhood. And the president of the Bialystok Shul, this share should be an aliyah to his neshama.
Amen.
Today's share is brought about by, I guess you call it current events. A news story that went viral within the Jewish world. I hope it won't go viral beyond the Jewish world. A very interesting story. I happen to think the story, I'm not here to find the culprits, as we'll soon see in the story. I'm here to analyze and use as a springboard to analyze halacha and very interesting topics. But first, I'll give you the story. The story is one of those stories that's very hard to understand. I would say a little bit unbelievable, but it seems, from what I've been able to hear from people, it seems legit. Here's the following story. I'm sure everyone knows the world headquarters for Chabad is 770 Eastern Parkway. An iconic building. You'll find replicas of that building in different spots around the world. You'll find it on people's talis or tefillin bags. Famous building. Well, next time you sell a replica of the building, maybe they should add this to the picture. They discovered this week a tunnel under 770 Eastern Parkway.
Was Hamas there?
Now, the lines that people say, unfortunately the Jewish world is very preoccupied with tunnels, dangerous tunnels, Hamas's tunnels. I saw a news story, even more scary than now nervous in the West Bank, that there's tunneling going on over there. The IDF is busy searching, to hear noises, to make sure there's no tunnels over there. Definitely something one would think could be to be worried about. But here they found, you hear the story out? They found a tunnel under 770 Eastern Parkway. So much so, the tunnel, I don't know exactly how this played out, but it comes up in the building under the women's section. So he discovered this tunnel. Now, this became public. This is the part, you're saying something that everyone knows of, very easy to check, is they shut down last Shabbos, the women's section in 770, because they're afraid that the ground underneath it was unstable, and they had to shut it down. So as of last Shabbos, it was shut down. It could be this Shabbos was open. Check with your relatives who live in Crown Heights. But they literally shut down the women's section 770 because of fear that this tunnel destabilized the ground. Now, how did they find the tunnel? So the stories have it two ways. Firstly, they were doing plumbing work in 770. And within the plumbing work, they discovered this tunnel. Beforehand, neighbors around there were complaining about noises at night. And they were suspect that something was going on. They heard drilling. Very strange. Now, anyone knows where it's laid out, the building, Chabad, it's not even, it's, iconic house fronts. There's a bigger building on the corner. The corner off Eastern Parkway is Kingston Avenue. Across the street there's the Jewish Children's Museum. So this tunnel supposedly went from across the street, Kingston Avenue, underground, up into the women's section in 770.
From the Children's Museum?
Huh?
Children's?
Not from the Children's Museum, from it seems like some type of a house, perhaps a private house. In this house, there once was a mikveh. I saw video of it. You can clearly see the handle rails going into a pit for a mikveh. This mikveh, it sounds like it's been defunct for a long time. Where the mikveh was, and I told this story over in my share, my Talmidim's biggest kasha was, where did they put the dirt? If you'd see people walking down Eastern Parkway with,
It's Crown Heights, right?
Right.
Much stranger things people saw. People see much stranger things. I don't think they don't mind people carrying pails of dirt.
pails and pails,
I'm with the guys.
buckets
I'm with them,
of dirt.
I'm with them.
But the guys in the kasha, where's the dirt? Well, if you see the video, it's not a kasha. The mikveh is currently filled with dirt. There's dirt everywhere over that basement. It looks disgusting.
What was the purpose of the tunnel?
That's the $1 million question. There's really $2 million questions. Number one, who dug it? And number two, what was the purpose of such a tunnel? This share is not looking to answer any of those two questions. Right? So if you're looking for answers, this is a halacha share. This is not unsolved mysteries. I don't know who dug it. I don't know why he dug it. Yes.
Your question is, did they build it with a permit?
Of course.
That's not a question.
Of course.
The question that was asked was it built with a permit? Absolutely not. Right? And that's why we hope this story does not get out
The fines will
to
be
right. To NYC Finance, but right, if it's all over the Jewish websites, it could be they know of it
Right,
already.
put your phone away, man. You're not supposed to be
But the original theory, here's one for the books. Now, even if you stop here, I'm not sure you could put this on the list. Well, the top 10 wildest stories you've heard in the past 10 years, past 20 years. No, this sounds like a pretty wild story, especially within the firm community. I never heard anything like this. The original theory of what happened was the following. The original theory was, during COVID, obviously, the world was shut down. Shuls were shut down. 770 was padlocked, was shut down. They suspected that there were people that wanted access to the building, so they tunneled in. Which, if you go with that theory, that means this tunnel was made about 3 years ago, and somehow was undiscovered in all that time. Very strange. Supposedly, Chabad brought in engineers and all types of people, A, to look at their floor, and B, just to analyze the tunnel. Their analysis said that this tunnel is 3 to 6 months old. That's it, not 3 years. So this is something that happened recently. So that kills the COVID theory.
That's a good construction.
Yeah. Yeah, they're asking for the construction company's name. I'm not sure they're giving out their...
Schumer's looking for the person, so
Yeah.
build a tunnel onto the Hudson River.
But it's a fascinating story.
They're looking in Bulgaria, do a ton of...
Right. I said maybe this is Elon Musk's work, but it doesn't have his signature. It looks professional, but not that professional. So what I would like to do today is use this fascinating story as a springboard to analyze cases like this. To analyze, if a person makes a tunnel that goes underneath someone else's property and shakes the foundations of that, what's the halacha of that? But you don't have to go dig tunnels. I mean, this thing it boggles the mind. This is Kingston Avenue. That's a major street, power lines, sewer lines, all the way to subway lines.
Subway's on Eastern Parkway.
Huh?
Subway's on Eastern Parkway.
Okay, so but the site, it's just like crazy, going, digging
A lot of
tunnels.
underground stuff there.
It's amazing. So what I would like to expound upon is, let's talk about, many times people do construction. And the construction they do on their side of the property cause problems on the other side of the property, especially in cases where people end up going to the border. I was just asked to Shiloh a couple of weeks ago. Someone just purchased a house, and he was asking me, exactly where could he go out to, on the side, in terms of someone else's property. He was asking in terms of planting things and climb, all different things. But there are halachas of Benam Chavero, of Niskei Shchenim. So how do you view this? So this was a classic, very interesting shayla, which I used in yeshiva to chazer Baba Kama and Sia Balavas with my talmidim. I brought them this case. I said, what does this look like to you? So, Daf Yomi is up to Baba Kama. Perfect. For those of you doing Daf Yomi, this is a good case to bring to your share. So the first thought that most people had was, oh my gosh, a tunnel is like a pit. This is a din of a bor. Halachas of a bor. Who makes a bor?
On the entrance.
That was the first discussion that we came up with. Now let me explain. I think this is a good plat.
The problem with the bore is that you'd fall in, but if it's a closed tunnel, it's not really the same thing.
Excellent point.
The bore
Only
is
by the
on
entrance.
property. A tunnel, the person owns the land under it and the air above it.
Excellent. Excellent. So let's talk.
So they're trespassing.
Bor is one of the most fascinating concepts in a person being responsible for damages, right? The Gemara talks about you're responsible if your animal does damage, you're responsible if you light a fire and the fire spreads and does damage. And one of the other cases, majorly in Baba Kama, is talked about is a pit. And there's all types of pits, right? If you leave your knapsack in a public domain and someone trips over your knapsack, that's a bor. If you dig a hole, the Gemara debates, barber shasayachid, you had a hole in your backyard and it wasn't, and someone happened to come into your backyard, there could be issues there too. Okay, well, you didn't marry shus. But for sure something that borders on going in, and a board doesn't have to necessarily be just straight down, it can be sideways, they have all different scenarios. But there's 2 points about bor that's chayiv for. And I think it's very interesting. One aspect the Gemara says you're chayiv for, or the one man Amar, is a person falling into a pit and hitting the bottom, getting hurt by chavata, by the damage. Just the bang itself hurts you. But there's another discussion by bor, which is very interesting, is havala, hevel, toxic fumes. The Gemara says in a bor of 10 tefachim deep, that amount of time of depth, the air at that point is so dangerous. If something would fall in there, you could die from it. Now, I was just debating this whole topic of bor this week, share. I came across a very interesting news item, and it hit me like, oh my gosh, of course. Unfortunately, they had a case of an Israeli soldier dying, not from a gunshot wound or anything like that, but from fungus. And one Israeli soldier passed away from a bacterial fungus that he picked up in Gaza. And the report that I read was there are multiple others who are in the hospital with these type of bacterial fungus, and it seems they have no treatment able to do with it, which is very dangerous. And the Israeli army, the Israeli health department is drastic, is looking to see what they could do for such a thing. They can't treat it. The soldier, it seemed like he contracted this issue and passed away relatively quick. So one of the theories that they have is that the ground in Gaza is so toxic because of all the underground tunnels that these people are building. That's a random theory I saw in a news item, what's going on, in Gaza. So I said to myself, maybe I'll need an Israeli health department. I'll show you Baba Kama. The Gemara says, when you dig underground, there's a danger of toxic fumes. That's a bacteria, that's something. It's fascinating. So this is another reason, don't you be digging your pits. Besides people obviously falling in unstable structures, when you're messing with the ground and really underground, you don't know what you're pulling up, what you're doing to the environment, and what you're exposing people to. It's crazy. But in analyzing first the case that we're dealing with, here these people went. Again, we don't know who it is. We're not telling you. We don't know. No inside information yet. But when people are digging, let's assume it was a group of people that dug this pit. And this pit, let's assume, destabilized the ground, the floor of the women's section over there in 770. So right now, Baruch Hashem, no one got down. No one fell into a pit. Really, the idea of falling into a pit is first and foremost, you have to have a hole. If someone falls into that hole, you're responsible to guard that hole, no one falls in it, or fill it up. Here, we're dealing with a situation, nobody actually fell in yet. But can't deny there's damage. Who knows how much, tens of thousands of dollars, hundreds of thousands of dollars, destabilizing a whole structure. It's a big deal. But that's not bor. Bor means, as argued here, is you made a hole, either someone falls in the hole or gets toxic damage from that hole. But here, you just destabilize the ground. So that's not exactly a pit. That you become the Baal HaBor and you're responsible for that.
If it was to destabilize further, and then then it would.
Right. Once if it would cave in and someone would fall into it, or someone fell into, if they made holes on the other side and someone fell in on that would be an issue of war. But here we're just at the stage of destabilizing the ground. It's hard to say at that point that's a bar.
A bore, by definition, is something that has some sort of an entrance or exit. There has to be a hole.
Right, correct.
So can't you define a bore as starting, because it can go any direction, as starting over here and going sideways for a long way.
True.
And it's still over there.
True, but in order to be chai for a bar,
You have to follow through.
right. The essence of a bar is you come to the pit. The victim comes to the pit.
If I leave my anvil in the middle of the street and someone crashes into it, that's not a bore, but I'm chayiv in terms of bore.
If
I leave an anvil in the middle of the street.
someone trips on it or someone bangs into it.
Someone crashes into it or something.
Yeah.
That's not a bore, but I'm chayiv because of bore. It's not because it has an entrance or exit.
Yeah, right. Yeah, true. We gave that case before. Yes.
Wouldn't something like this actually be more related to fire because you have a problem in one place that causes a problem that moves to a different place?
But we will see. Simple definition of fire is mazik of eish is you light a fire and it spreads. When you're not, the Gemara talks that the definition of fire goes beyond fire. It's really because the Gemara's case of eish is you light a fire here and it spreads through the wind. So the Gemara expands the definition of fire not to mean just fire, but any object which is carried in the wind, which does damage, that's Aish. So Gemara has a very interesting case. Because let's say you put a rock on...
Aish is mobile.
Right.
As opposed to a bore, which is stationary.
Exactly. Gemara could have a case where an object starts off being a pit that someone could trip on. But if it's in a place where it's possible for it to be thrown through the wind, then that will be an Aish. Because you should expect that the wind's going to come, take your rock, and throw it into something.
In case of a hurricane?
Yes.
In case of a hurricane, I'm responsible for the stuff in my yard.
Yes, exactly. So, good point. A hurricane might be considered a ruach she'eina mitzuya, a wind that's not normal. Yeah, what's the idea of ruach she'eina mitzuya? Is because you can't expect that. But if you have a case where there's a hurricane warning, and you could expect your projectiles in your backyard are going to fly everywhere, and you didn't do your due diligence locking them down, from a halachic perspective, that might be reason to be chayiv, even though it's a ruach she'eina mitzuya, because you should have known about it. There was fair warning. Now, what I would like to do now, everyone has a Gemara, Chaf Heim and Beis, this is Baba Basra. I want to quickly go through some Gemara in Baba Basra. I remember we touched upon this last year in this year. Let me just show you the fascinating halachas. We're talking about neighbor relations and, Kananahara. I can't speak for Hollywood, but I'm pretty sure it's going on in Hollywood too. The amount of construction that you see here, Kananahara, in our neighborhood, is unbelievable. There's construction everywhere, right? Almost block after block after block. You see knocking down houses, building houses, block construction. So he said these halachas are very relevant on a daily basis. So the halachas here in Baba Basra and Perikol Yachbar talk about nischei shchenim, damages between properties. So the Gemara says, Mishnah says, you're supposed to distance your tree if you want to plant it near a pit, 25 amos. So trees with bigger roots, you have to do 50 amos. Whether we're talking about a situation where it's vertical or horizontal.
Our yards are not that big in the first place.
Yeah. Okay, that's for Hollywood. In a board kadma, right? Okay, the board got there first, so then you could cut down the tree and you pay him for it. Then Elam Kodem, the tree got there first. He gets to keep his tree there. Savizekodem, it's a question who got there first. You don't cut it off. This is all the opinion of the Rabbanan. Yossi Omer, even though the pit got there before the tree, now in this case we're saying who's the one doing damage? The tree. Because of the roots of the tree will destabilize your pit, or really it's your pool. Something, with concrete love that's going to destroy that, but okay, you could do something. Right? Even though the victim got there first, lo yikots, Rabbi Yossi has an opinion, a very interesting idea, is the default assumption, and that's the idea of the Rabbanon, is whoever we classify as the mazik, the one doing the damage, he has to distance himself. Rabbi Yossi says no, the victim has to distance himself. Because as long as what you're doing is in your property, it's as part of your property rights. I can do whatever I want with my property rights. I might hurt someone else. Let the victim move. That's Rabbi Yossi's opinion. Okay? Now, the Gemara has an interesting case. I want to skip to the last 5 lines of the Gemara. Amar Rabbi Yehuda, Amar Shmuel, Halacha K'divrei Rabbi Yossi. So firstly, the Gemara paskins, black and white. We paskin like Rabbi Yossi, that the victim is the one who has to move. So people have property rights, and normally that means they could do things, we'll talk about it exactly up to the border, close to the border. Amar Rav Ashi states, the Avinan Bei Rav Kana, Haviyaminan Modi Rabbi Yossi B'Giyu Didei. Rabbi Yossi admits by a case which is Giri Didei, literally translated as his arrows. There are some cases where I'm doing something in my backyard, where the act in my backyard, it's as if I'm shooting arrows into your backyard. You brought up H before. This is actually pretty close to H, might be even beyond that. Right? The Rush uses the lashon describing Giri delay. It's kimazik biyadayim, as if you're damaging with your own hands. We understand a person's responsible. I'm a mazik if I would smash someone's car, right, with my hands. Okay? Of course, I'm chai for that. If I take an axe and smash it, of course, that's me. If I would shoot something at it and damage it, that's also me. It's my projectile. It's coming from me. So the Gemara views that there are cases of things which are giri didei. It's considered your arrows. What's an example of that? The Gemara brings a case. Papi Yunoi Ani Vehesher. Some guy, Papi Yunoi, he was originally poor, but he got rich. Havi Banapam Disa. He built his palace, right? The first thing you do when you win the lottery, build yourself a big house, right? Chinuch-wise, good question. Don't tell your kids. Keep the money in the bank. So Gemara basically has a case that they were doing some work, getting some sesame seeds, so it caused Papi Yunai's mansion to shake. He became rich, but I guess he had faulty construction. We say Rabbi Yossi admits by Gira delay, by your own arrows. So in this case, the Gemara considered they're doing such things, such jackhammers, whatever they were using over there, that caused the next door neighbors house to shake, cause damage there. Where it says for that, you have to stop yourself. I saw an interesting point. I saw one of the Elia Baruch Finkel makes a point in this Gemara, near Rebbeim. He asks, if you're telling me that when I shoot something, I'm responsible, okay, yeah, that sounds pretty posh. That's mazik b'yadayim. What's the Gemara proving from this Rav Ashi case? Right? Do you think Rabbi Yossi would say it could be mazik b'yadayim? What's the Gemara's havmina? Like, why do they have to bring a proof from this case? So he says a pshat. He bases it on something Reb Chaim Brisker said, that there's a tzad to say in halacha, if you're doing something in your backyard, even if it's adam amazik, one might think that's part of Rabbi Yossi's din of property rights. I could do whatever I want in my backyard, even if it's going to come out to damage you, and I'm the one damaging you. But if I started, I'm sort of safe. If I'm doing it in my backyard, then I'm safe. To which the Gemara is saying, no such thing. If your fingerprints are on the damage that was done, it's considered your arrows, which is considered your koach. It doesn't help you doing the privacy and the permit of your backyard. You're fully responsible. That's what they're bringing out from this Gemara. There's no excuse for something when it's viewed as adam amazik. There's no excuse. You're fully responsible.
We talked about that a few months ago. You brought up the idea of somebody has a swimming pool in their backyard and the neighbor builds a giant house with a window over to the swimming pool. So who's liable for
Okay. The case you just brought up, which is another case, which happens a lot also in the neighborhood, that we talked about last year, of a person building a swimming pool next to someone else's. There, that's a different type of damage.
Or the swimming pool came first.
Right.
And the big house
You're right. It's interpersonal relations, in this case, shchenim. There, it's a different type of damage. That's viewed hezekariah. That's viewed as the damage of me looking at you. Now, aside from maybe some lashonos, pashpshat, no one's going to call hezekariah your arrows. It's not the same. In order to be the level that I'm talking about, really what I'm saying is a case where I do something which my fingerprints are on it, can mazik be dying? That's adam mazik. A hezekariah is usually viewed less than that. It's I can't do something in my backyard. I'm embarrassed to go swimming because you can see.
No, I understood, but my point was that there was a shaila as to who was liable.
Right, yes,
And
yes.
There it's comparable
Yes.
situations. Who's liable?
So, similarly in this case, I actually brought this case to Dayan yesterday. I asked him what he thought about this case. I didn't name him Chabad, but I said someone who did a tunnel, someone's property. So, right, we came to the same conclusion. That would be Adam HaMasik. That's you doing something with your hands. And even if it was accidental, you didn't mean to weaken the ground of your neighbor's property. But if you're doing something, right, this would be, if I'm doing it in my backyard, I'm digging a tunnel, okay? I want to practice, I'm training for the IDF. So I'm tunneling in my backyard, to practice, right? If that would in any way damage the property on the other side, by your digging things, that's your damage. That's seemingly part of you. If you can view that as Adam Mazik, I'm shaking. Kamara Mara Maparla Arla. Every shovel I dig is weakening your land, and I'm responsible for that even in my backyard. Certainly in a case where I infringe on you, I went under your property. Of course, that's Adam Mazik, and everyone involved in that is responsible. Yes.
This seems like it goes even further because it doesn't seem like there's any compensation or dispensation for the case where you have no way of knowing that would happen and you should not have had known because it never happened that way before or it's not.
Well, you're bringing up really, that's what we talk by your animal does damage or your fire. I should have realized if I leave something in my backyard during a hurricane, it's going to fly there. That's their we're judging really your carelessness, and you should have known something would happen. But that's beyond it. When it comes to Adam HaMazik, even if it will be accidental, the Adam HaMazik is, if we could trace it, that's viewed as you doing the damage, we throw the book at you. That's more clever than other things. Now, regarding our case is a second point. And again, I don't know who did it, but a very interesting point. If you have multiple people doing damage together, they're all digging a tunnel. So when the news broke, let's say 10 guys were digging, 2 smart guys, ended up in Israel. Other 2 guys, let's assume these people are from the Crown Heights, they could end up anywhere around the world. They have connections. People ditch town. And all you have left are 2 schleppers that, what would you say in that case? 10 people did the damage together. 8 of them fled. And you have 1 or 2 guys that you caught. Are they responsible for all the damage?
I'd say they're each responsible for 100%.
It's joint several liability. Yeah.
So I want to show you a very interesting halacha. And again, this is something which is a general rule, which will be relevant in many cases. And it's important to know. When we talk about doing damage, unfortunately you have cases that people do damage to you. And, you have to work it out. So if you look in the Shulchan Aruch, this is Choshen Mishpat Siman Taf Yud. Okay, I give you the full Shulchan Aruch here. It says, Yesh Pisha Omer, Hu Adin L'Shnayim She'eziku V'Shnayim B'nei Chiyuva. 2 people do damage. I'm reading from the Halacha and Lamed Zayin. 2 people do damage. The middle of the thing, that's the Shulchan Aruch right there, the Beis Yosef. 2 people do damage, and they're both responsible. El She'echad Barach. Shulchan Aruch's case, 2 people did the damage, and 1 guy flees. O She'ein Lo B'mal Shalem. Or he claims bankruptcy. I have no money. The halacha is nishtale me'acher. You take your money from the other guy. He's bankrupt. He runs away. You can collect fully from the other guy. Ad shir mashal yichayiv on nezek zeh. Up until the amount that he would be responsible for this damage. Ilu also levado. If he would do it by himself. Okay. Now, obviously a case could get tricky. What happens if you're dealing with the damage where he can't do it by himself? He needs other people to do it. So then in the case, seemingly you have to prorate it. You can't be responsible for all the damage, but you should be responsible for part of it. The Yesh Cholkin, others argue, the Kivan de Chavera Midina Bar Tashlumin, El Shein Mal Shalim. People argue, Shulchan Aruch brings, look, the other guy is also responsible to pay. He doesn't have what to pay. Why should I get stuck with the bill because of it? So the Gemara has this case. I'll give you the ramification of the Gemara's case. An animal that pushes another animal into a pit. In the nowadays, okay, this gets involved with shore and the idea of chatzi nazak, and nowadays that's viewed as a kanas. We don't collect that, but you could definitely have cases. The Gemara had this whole discussion. The Gemara comes in a pretty cool case where there's multiple actors doing damage, and the Gemara makes it even more complicated, right? Where are they up to in Daf Yomi right now? What? Oh. Mom's right there.
It's right there.
So the shore comes. Yeah, Nun Gimel, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
So the Gemara has this great case, great Ksos. Remember that Ksos?
There's more than one. Yeah.
Oh no, a great one. So the Gemara had that case of a shore and Adam push an animal into a pit. So the Gemara really does like a 3D case because the boar has its own set of dinim, the Adam doing damage has his own set of dinim, and the shore doing damage is their set of dinim. And they all converge in one case. But really the principles, so the Gemara there is really showing like 3 dimensions of different types of damage, all converging in the same case. But really some of the principles are just in general. 3 people do damage together, one's out there, can I collect from the other one? Very, very interesting. Lamaisa, what do you gain from all this? I think a few things. Is a person has to be, the Gemara says an idea, I told them, show them you have an idea. Really more, people in general are very cautious. Right? We started this year talking about a case of where people originally thought this whole thing happened during COVID. A lot of people during COVID, how careful they were before they left the house, careful they were with masks, many other things, all seemingly, first and foremost, to protect themselves. They don't get sick. The Gemara uses a principle, Tosus brings us, that really a person should be more careful not to do damage. On a higher level, you should be more cognizant of being careful not to do damage than being careful not to get damaged. Right? Of course, everyone's going to be extra careful not to get damaged, but the Torah perspective is you have to be even more vigilant. Make sure that you don't do damage. Person should never be a mazik. A lot of times, people get caught up with, I don't know why these people dug this pit. But whatever it was, they got caught up doing it. I don't think they had intention to weaken the floor of the women's section in 770. I don't think that's what they started with. They want to do that, just take axes and, blow it up. That's not what they were trying to do. They got caught up in something else. But a person has to be so vigilant, chas v'shalom, not to do damage. Recently someone was talking about me, and this deserves his own share, but it was a little bit, I remember we did one of these shows last year, we brought this up, but someone was talking about the amount of car accidents in a certain community, which is above and beyond any normal thing. And you have to signal before you turn, you have to stop at stop signs. When the light is red, that means stop. People could be very aggressive drivers. I was driving down the street the other day. It's so funny. I was coming to Avos Banim. So I'm driving my car. Now, my car happens to have a few bumper stickers. It might show that I'm a Rebbe. I make the turn to come into yeshiva. I literally saw somebody. He was behind me a second ago after the turn. He jumps, goes into the left lane, jumps in front of me to cut me off, to get into yeshiva first, to get potentially a parking space before me. I think to myself, I'm from Jew. I'm going to the same place you're going. You just what are you doing? Right? And chas v'sholom, if that would cause an accident, people have to be super vigilant when it comes to doing damage to somebody else. And Adam Amazik, we're responsible even for, you drive, your car is you. The same thing, your jackhammer's you, your car is you. And you're responsible for that. People have to be very careful when it comes to doing something. The chiddush is, Adam Amazik, even if you're doing it in your backyard, totally my property, but something that could potentially do damage in your property, and it's Adam Amazik, I'm fully responsible for that. So we'll be zocheh to be saved from such damage, both on the receiving end or chas v'shalom, the giving end. Amen.